Crystal clearly observed her brothers with weapons and several knives laid out on their bed. She clearly heard Michael asking Robert, "Should we do it now?" Robert responded confidently with a clear yes. Driven by a dangerous purpose, the two brothers navigated their home, systematically transforming their eerie dream into a terrifying actuality. Have you ever thought about those unsettling situations that are so spooky that they can only be described as a scary dream? Do you ever think about the possibility of causing harm to your entire family, just like you would with your own sibling? Can one even comprehend such a notion? Unfortunately, for one unsuspecting family, this unsettling idea became an unwelcome truth. This story is about two teenage brothers who became notorious for causing the deaths of 5 members of their own family, all in their desperate pursuit of fame. On a night filled with distress on July 22, 2015, the calm air of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma was disrupted by a challenging 911 call. A troubled boy's voice reverberated through the dispatcher's headset, alleging that his brother was violently assaulting their family.
Broken Arrow 911. Hello?
Hello.
Hi, where are you at?
Broken Arrow, Oklahoma 7411.
What address?
709 Magnolia Court.
Okay. Are you the only one there?
No, my brother's attacking my family.
Your dad is attacking your family?
No, my brother.
The operator was immediately surrounded by a loud and disorderly mix of screams and chaos coming from the other side of the line. Unexpectedly, a male voice interrupted, saying a basic hello, before the call suddenly fell silent. Swiftly, the dispatchers identified the source of the alarming call to the peaceful suburban home of a 52-year-old man named David Bever. Several efforts were made to contact him using the same number, but all calls went unanswered, increasing worries. David's calm home life was enjoyed with his wife, April, 44, and their 7 children, ranging in age from 2 to 18 years. Their kids included Robert and Michael, who were 18 and 16 years old respectively, followed by Crystal, 13, Daniel, 12, Christopher, 7, Victoria, 5, and their youngest, Autumn, who was only 2 years old. David had a job in the technology industry, while April was a dedicated homemaker who taught their children at home. Despite their extensive family, the Beavers lived a relatively secluded life, primarily participating in activities with their family. The neighbors only observed them when they engaged in occasional outdoor activities in their backyard or when they were doing lawn maintenance.
Every time that I would take my kids to the park, my kids would run up to their fence and try to talk to them, and the kids would just turn around and even run from my kids and run back in the house.
After marrying David when she was only 15 years old, April became an avid user of Reddit, managing her profile with the username Aakimum. Her posts often focused on talking about the experience of raising her 7 children and the process of homeschooling them. At various times, she presented herself as a combination of various feelings: tired, yet happy, and very fortunate. The extent of her love for her children was clear when she once stated that there was nothing in the world that could convince her to change her family in any manner. She stated, "I would never sacrifice having any of my children in order to acquire more money. They are remarkable individuals, and the world will gain from their presence. And nothing I could purchase or put money into could match the opportunity of providing someone with a chance to live." In contrast, there were troubling reports about David regularly mistreating his children both physically and verbally, sometimes even throwing them across the room in fits of anger. One evening, on July 22nd, at approximately 11:30 p.m., Crystal entered Robert and Michael's room to communicate their mother's request for assistance with the dishes. This event would later be engraved in Crystal's memory as she remembered the disturbing sight of her brothers wearing protective gear and the unsettling sight of several knives scattered on their bed. A curious question from Michael to his brother still resonated in her mind: "Should we do it now?" Robert replied, "Yes." Michael asked Crystal to come into their room, saying he wanted to show her something on his computer. Upon her arrival, the unexpected occurred. Her brother Robert, holding a knife, came up from behind and violently attacked her, cutting her throat. Despite being seriously injured in her arms and abdomen from his continuous assault, Crystal was able to flee towards her younger sister's room, telling her to lock herself in the bathroom. The commotion caught the notice of their mother, April, who hurried to investigate. The shocking awareness of her children's actions compelled her to call the police, but Michael intercepted and subjected her to a terrifying series of at least 48 knife wounds. Unobserved, the two attacker brothers continued their violent spree, moving from one room to another. Their father, David, was also not spared. He was struck with a blunt force, followed by 28 knife stabs. Upon finding Christopher and Victoria taking refuge in the bathroom, they cleverly enticed them to come out by having Michael pretend to be another victim of the situation and desperately asking for assistance. The siblings, attempting to save their brother whom they thought was in danger, ended up facing a comparable horrifying outcome at the hands of Robert. Meanwhile, their 12-year-old brother Daniel had locked himself in his room and successfully called 911. Displaying the same clever trickery, Michael tricked Daniel into opening the door, pretending to be under attack. Once Daniel obeyed, Robert was able to enter and sadly took the young boy's life.
Daniel was in his room, just down the hall, and I was like, "Let me."
How old's Daniel?
I think he's 12.
Okay.
And I was like, "Let me in," and he let me in. He was sitting there on the phone with the police. I grabbed the phone, which is my phone. I got my phone, and then I ran into the kitchen and I smashed the underground.
Which was your phone?
Yeah, it was my phone.
I don't have a cell phone anymore.
During this horrific event, Crystal summoned strength to reach the front door, aiming to trigger the alarm. Her efforts were in vain, however, as the brothers had already deactivated it, leading her to collapse on the front lawn while seeking help outside. Regaining consciousness, she encountered the chilling sight of Michael dragging her back into the house while her younger siblings' cries of terror echoed within. The police arrived on the scene around the same time. The sidewalk and front steps were stained with blood, indicating the carnage within. The pounding on the door was interrupted by a faint cry for help from the inside, a moment that prompted law enforcement to break in. They discovered Crystal, lingering on the edge of life, in a shockingly gruesome scene. Before being transported via ambulance, Crystal managed to identify her assailants, her own brothers. As the police meticulously examined the house, they were confronted with the appalling brutality inflicted upon 5 family members. Evidence of violence was everywhere: face, chest, neck, arms, and abdomen. Amidst this scene of slaughter, the only glimmer of relief was found with 2-year-old Autumn, unscathed and innocently asleep in an upstairs room, mercifully unaffected by the grisly proceedings. The two brothers attempted to disappear into the darkness, escaping from the location of their terrible deed through the backyard, seeking refuge in the nearby forest. The quick response of the police, with their reliable dog partners, helped to shorten their escape. The officers apprehended and interrogated the brothers. A detective, recalling the disturbing image of the two boys during their arrest, said they were not distressed. They were not upset. It's almost like they had a sense of confidence. It appeared that the disturbing truth of their actions didn't bother them, as another officer mentioned. One of them, likely Robert, even had a creepy smile. When the police managed to catch them, the brothers were in a fearful state. Images captured by the police depict them soaked in blood and covered in dirt, with their clothing torn. The most eerie were the marks of what appeared to be human flesh that were visible on them.
Broken Arrow, Oklahoma has 1, maybe 2 murders a year, but tonight this community is reeling from 5, the worst crime anyone here can remember.
It weighs a lot on, especially when the victims involved are juveniles.
11:30 last night, the 911 call comes in. It's silent, no one on the line. When police arrive to investigate, they see 2 young men running out of the back door of the home. Canines soon track down 18-year-old Robert Beaver and his 16-year-old brother in the woods behind the home. Inside, horror. 5 members of the brothers' family found stabbed to death. Their parents, David and April Beaver, their 12 and 17-year-old brothers, and their 5-year-old sister. 2 siblings survived the rampage. A 13-year-old sister is in the hospital tonight, and the family's baby, a 2-year-old girl, the only one left unhurt.
Investigators conducted separate interviews with the 2 brothers as they attempted to understand the reasons behind the terrible act. Robert openly admitted with a troubling sense of satisfaction about his aggressive behavior. He disclosed that he and Michael were deeply fascinated by the notoriety of serial killers and mass murderers, nurturing a troubling conviction that committing multiple murders would elevate him to a divine status. Robert revealed his desire to attain recognition similar to the infamous reputation of well-known criminals. He confessed to making plans for the family massacre when he was just 13 years old and even getting a job at a call center to save up the money needed for the violent act: knives, protective gear, helmets, guns, and bullets. Their heartless plan involved eliminating their entire family, including their 2-year-old sister. After the killing, they planned to remove the heads from the bodies, get rid of the remains in trash cans, and hide them in the attic of the house. In their careful plan, they intended to record 2 versions of the aftermath, one displaying the horrors for the police to see and a sanitized one meant for public YouTube viewing. Their sinister plan involved stealing the family car and going on a series of shootings in their town, aiming to reach a minimum of 50 casualties. Interestingly, the detective who questioned Robert later revealed how the boy showed amusement and even slight excitement while describing his story filled with blood. Although Robert's confession has not been made public, Michael's admission became known. Unlike his older brother, Michael claimed that Robert had influenced and pressured him, stating that Robert had never agreed with the awful plan but had forced him to cooperate.
Your big brother's telling you he wants to be famous, and you guys are making these plans. Surely you want some of that fame too, right?
Yeah, I do want to do it with him because, like, he's going to do it no matter what. He says if I don't do it with him, they'll just kill me too. Or leave me there, so, do it with him.
Yeah.
So y'all have been planning this since 30th of June, you said?
Yeah.
That's the first time y'all talked about it?
Well, not the first time we talked about Blue. I mean, he buys the light vest. He always said, dude, come out, he'll kill him.
Michael mentioned that Robert, with a disturbing level of anticipation, had purchased protective gear and began gathering knives months before the frightening incident. In addition, he had made arrangements for firearms to be delivered to a nearby store, and an astonishing 3,000 rounds of ammunition were set to arrive at their home just one day after the unfortunate event. Engaged in a conflict with the police, Michael initially refused to admit any involvement in the killings. However, he eventually admitted to the disturbing acts of stabbing his younger brother Christopher and their mother as the wall of denial fell apart. It seems that Robert was very straightforward about the plan. The family members were to be removed just like ninjas would, suddenly, quietly, and unnoticed. Nevertheless, when confronted with the grim truth of their lethal scheme, circumstances quickly escalated beyond their control. As things developed, they realized with surprise that their threatening plan was not going to be a simple task to accomplish.
And this is your last chance to just kind of let us know, to be honest, to man up and tell us exactly what you did and start making it right.
I hit Christopher. I did not stab Victoria with Daniel.
You did not stab Victoria.
I tried to stab Mom.
You stabbed your mom.
I got when she was walking away. I tried to go for a neck, but, you know.
Both Michael and Robert faced severe accusations, 5 charges of first-degree murder and 1 charge of assault and battery with the intention to cause harm. Surprisingly, despite being only 16 at the time of the crime, Michael was also charged as an adult. Adding a different element to the story, their sister Crystal, who managed to survive the attack, bravely came forward to give her testimony against her brothers. She disclosed that Michael and Robert had casually discussed eliminating their family and taking their money for more than a year. Crystal mentioned that her brothers admired individuals who committed mass shootings and even expressed a desire for more of these criminals to evade punishment. Crystal stated that the brothers frequently held a misanthropic belief that the world had too many people. She also admitted expressing worries about their concerning behavior to their mother, only to be dismissed with the phrase "boys will be boys." At first, both brothers chose to act innocent, denying the charges brought against them. However, Robert quickly changed his approach and admitted guilt in an attempt to avoid the death penalty. As a result, he was given 5 life sentences, and he will spend the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of parole. In a troubling disclosure in July 2016, it was reported that Robert had made an attempt to end his own life by using a bedsheet to hang himself. The attentiveness of a detention officer during a routine check prevented Robert from attempting suicide. The trial of Michael began in April 2018, with Robert unexpectedly showing up to give testimony in support of his brother. In a surprising twist, Robert took complete responsibility, stating that Michael was simply under his control. He asserted full accountability for the fatalities, maintaining that Michael was not involved in any acts of killing.
Stand all day long today testifying in his brother Michael's defense. Robert said, looking back, it's unfortunate this plan ever came to fruition. He says, for a long time the plan wasn't real. It was just something he thought about to make himself feel better. Robert went through the entire chain of events of that night in detail. This was back in July of 2015. He talked about how it started, how it ended, taking responsibility for every death and saying he doesn't even remember seeing Michael holding a knife.
Supporting Michael's involvement in the terrible situation, Robert admitted that his brother had played an important role in tricking their siblings into opening the door to disaster. In the end, Michael's admission and the exposure of his betrayal influenced the jury's decision, resulting in a verdict of guilt. Consequently, Michael was charged with all offenses and given a lifelong prison sentence without the possibility of parole. Currently, he is in prison at the Lexington Correctional Center, while his brother Robert is held at the Joseph Harp Correctional. But wait a moment, the story doesn't conclude there. Inside the prison, Robert tried to attack prison staff by showing a sharp weapon, which caused a lot of commotion. This bold action was prevented as the guards, with their sharp observation, were able to control him. Meanwhile, while being held before trial, Michael drew some very disturbing pictures in his journal, showing their terrible act. The highly troubling entries highlighted the evident problems with their mental well-being. However, even after thorough evaluations by psychiatrists, no conclusive explanation emerged to understand their distorted mindset. Following the events, Crystal and Autumn, the remaining members of the Bever family, discovered a positive aspect. They formed a family through adoption, which provided them solace in each other's presence. This troubling incident continued to have a lasting impact on Broken Arrow, with the house being the target of negative comments on social media. In a dramatic follow-up, 2 years after the incident, an unknown individual sets fire to the notorious house.
The Broken Arrow Fire Department says it got the call around 3:30 a.m. When crews arrived, the house was engulfed in flames. It took an hour for them to get it under control.
I'm interested in hearing your opinions on this matter. Share your viewpoint in the comments below, and don't forget to click the like button and subscribe for more interesting stories.